back to a new Hints and Theories video, this time about episode number 4. My name is Julia and together we try to figure out who the mole is. This time we talk about all the things that happened in episode number 4, but let's start with the rubber duck theories. By the way, if you want to make sure not to miss any further Hints and Theories videos, then please subscribe. And you've probably already seen my short video about the rubber duck theories. I've uploaded that one on Instagram and TikTok, so make sure to follow me there as well to not miss any extra hints. As I said, let's start with the rubber duck theories, because the rubber duck was very important in this episode. Now actually it all started back in late November, early December, when the Dutch people had the chance to figure out who the candidates are. So you probably watched my video about that. They had to solve some riddles and then they could figure out who the candidates are. And while they did that, there were some keys they needed, and the keychains were rubber ducks. And that led to the situation that there were several fans trying to figure out if those rubber ducks had any meaning behind them. And there are actually two, well, let's say big theories about them. The first thing is that it could be a hint to Ranomi. The idea behind that is in general that, of course, Ranomi was a professional swimmer and yeah, the duck swims as well, so maybe a water hint. And the second idea is that the duck, or better said the rubber duck, is like a symbol used in the coding and hacking scene, and you know that Daniel is an investigative journalist who knows a lot about hacking and the dark web and all of that, and that could also be a clever hint leading to Daniel, especially because, as I said, the Dutch fans had to solve some riddles, so basically they had to hack the boxes we got to do in episode number 1 to figure out the candidates. So they did some kind of hacking, and that's why some people, well, thought this could be a hint leading to Daniel. Then in episode number 1 we got to see another rubber duck in task number 2, and that one was hidden in the background. And Ranomi went to that rubber duck and took it in her hand for like 2 seconds and then placed it back down. So she didn't do anything with it, just taking it in her hand and placing it back down. In episode number 2 there was again a rubber duck hidden in the background, and again in task number 2. This time it was placed on a shelf in that room with all those, well, things, with all that stuff, and there wasn't, well, really someone picking it up. The only thing we got to see was that Anique was standing close to the shelf, so she was like in the scene and the shelf was in the background. But yeah, we know now that it can't be Anique anymore. But there's also the theory that the mole is always part of that group where the rubber duck is. And that would in that episode be the group who was trying to create those creative photos so that the other group could find the street art. Then in last week's episode there was no real rubber duck. But in task number 2, again, Ranomi decided to go for a word definition, which was a bit suspicious as well, because she typed the word Peking eend in, and that means translated Peking duck. And here's some background information you need to understand that theory around that, well, situation. The thing is that you probably remember a candidate from an older season. His name is Florentine, and Florentine is an artist who creates giant floating rubber ducks, and I actually think it is the biggest one. That one is placed in Peking. And last but definitely not least, episode number 4, again task 2, and I mean, come on, this can't be a coincidence anymore, can it? Was filled with a lot of rubber ducks. I have to say that of course it could still lead to Ranomi or to Daniel. Both are still in the game. And also during the mall talk they said that Rick would talk about the rubber ducks in the new episode of the official podcast. And unfortunately I can't listen to that because it's not available here. So I really hope that some of the Dutch fans will share the information online. But until then, let me know what you think about all of those rubber ducks and all of those rubber ducks theories. Let's finally talk about task number 1 of this episode, and in this task Ranomi was the only one who earned money in the end. That could of course be a huge hint to her being a candidate, but it could also be, well, the idea of a mole who said like there was already so much money lost, I could gain some to have a good excuse to appear as a good candidate. What I also recognized was that Soy was very eager to keep that walkie-talkie in his hand. He wasn't sharing that with anyone. And one more thing about the walkie-talkie is, when Nabil was in that labyrinth, it didn't work. And I'm not sure if it was Soy's intention to not let it work anymore, or if it was Nabil's fault, but that definitely was strange. And also, you know that they had to find those packing lists to get the money. That was also a bit, well, weird, I have to say. Of course, they didn't have the physical money back then, but I'm very curious to see like a close-up of those packing lists, if there's any probably hidden hint on there and actually what is written on there. So I will try to figure that out online and let you know about that on my, well, social media accounts. But then again, 13 out of 15 of those lists were found. 2 of them weren't found, and you probably remember that Soy was the last one to go in there and he didn't find any anymore. So either he really didn't find them, or he ignored them if he is the mole, or the mole let 2 of them disappear. And that seems like a really, well, logical and common mole strategy to me, to just let something important, something money-worthy disappear. I mean, they could just, well, throw it in one of those giant boxes. I mean, there were holes in it, so just get rid of the money. Task number 2 was the one with the ducks. We already talked a bit about it, but there are some more things we can discuss about that task. The first thing is that it is called eenzame Hoogte, and that means in English lonely heat. So who was the one who was lonely in the heat, like up in the air? Daniel, in that plane. And also about Daniel in the plane, you know, he wasn't the one who first recognized that giant yellow duck on the ground. It was François, the pilot. So either he didn't really see it, or he didn't want to see it. And also about that rubber duck group, let's call them like that, they had a flat tire, and it's not really sure who did that. And also the boys were, well, way more communicative than the girls were, and the girls were quite and also Nabil was almost like a coach trying to get them up that hill, and that's quite interesting. The question is, which group would have been the best for the mole? And I believe that maybe the mole would have liked to be in the duck group, because, well, Daniel's situation is of course an interesting one, and they kind of had the key to getting the money by getting the important information of not opening that envelope. But then again, it was very unlikely that they would hear him. I mean, that plane was so loud and so far away from them that, well, for the mole to sabotage, it would have probably been better to be in the duck group. And last but not least about that task, Jure and Soy were pretty eager to open that envelope and, well, didn't really wait to get any information from Annick. Guys, what an nerve-wracking last task. Or, I mean, this was like so exciting, but also a bit, well, nerve-wracking and frustrating at the end, because I was so sad and I felt so sorry for Annick to, well, get kicked out of the game in this way. And I also believe that there will be fans who will not like that, because it's actually a bit against the rules of Widm, isn't it? The idea is that the one with the actual red screen with the worst test goes home, and she didn't have the worst test and still had to go home. Bit unfair, I think. Nevertheless, let's have a look at the task and discuss about it a bit. So the first thing I was wondering about was why Rick had to talk to them all, well, alone, after each other. Because, well, they all get to see the scream in the same room at the same time. So why did he couldn't inform them in a normal way, like they always do, standing in the group there, and then he just tells them what the idea of the task is. So the only idea I could come up with is that maybe the mole got some extra information, maybe the information who actually has the red screen, so that the mole could influence that whole well, money deciding discussion. But yeah, that is a bit weird, I think. Also, Anke was very dominating in the task. She really tried to, well, get a say in how they would split up the money. Maybe she's experienced in that. Again, she is chief editor, so she knows how to kind of split up well, responsibilities and assignments, but still it was pretty, well, obvious and pretty dominating. And the question is, would you do that if you are the mole? Of course that would be interesting for the mole, but it's also a huge risk. So I do think it makes her more suspicious, and it is definitely something for the people who are already in an Anke tunnel vision, but it could also be very dangerous. And of course it didn't really work out in the end for the mole, because there was no money taken out of the pot when Annick left the game. If you ask me, then I think Soy was the one with the original red screen. It was just his behavior, his acting, how he was, well, replying to the questions of the others when he was asked why he would, well, earn a huge amount. He was just, well, not being his normal, happy, exciting self. And this is why I assume that he had the red screen. What do you think? Who do you think had the red screen? Daniel, Nabil or Soy? Another idea is that maybe Daniel or Nabil is the mole trying to get a huge amount of money, because the mole of course knows that in the next task, so the task 1 of next week, they will have the chance to use it as play money and to get rid of it anyways. Let me know what you think about the task. Do you think it is a bit unfair that Annick had to leave the game? Also tell me, who do you think had the original red screen? That were all hints and theories about episode number 4 so far. I'm sure there are a lot more in there, so let me know if you've spotted anything suspicious down there in the comments below. And if you want to make sure not to miss any further hints or theories videos, then please subscribe, follow me on Instagram and on TikTok for more information about Widm and other The Mole shows. And you can still join our Facebook group or our pool in the Widm app. I'm so looking forward to read all your hints and theories. Until next week. Bye!